Thanks, Trey. Thanks, David, for asking me to be here today, and thank all of you all for showing up. What an incredible turnout this is. I'm going to step back for a minute. I've never prepared anything. I speak fairly often, and I never prepare anything. It's easy to talk about what I want to talk about because it's just what's going on in my life. And I'm going to reflect back a little bit. Does anybody in this room ever reflect and think, why was I born into the situation that I was born into? I hear some snickering over here. You know, I do that quite often, and here lately it's been happening a lot in my life. You know, I grew up with a dad that was very tough. My dad went to college at Arkansas for 1 year, decided to drop out and marry my mother and go into the Air Force. His dad told him he'd dig ditches for the rest of his life. He said, I may dig ditches, but I'll dig the best ditches you've ever seen in your life. Or that's the story he told me. So he started digging oil wells, drilling oil wells. But that's not the point. The point is that I was born 5 years after he was married, and he took me to church all the time. I grew up Methodist, but I didn't really understand the meaning of what I was doing. And my dad never really pushed me to know my Heavenly Father. So I spent most of my childhood seeking the love of my father, earthly father. And I could never quite get there. I bet there's some men in this room right here that understand exactly what I'm talking about. You wanted your dad to be proud and approve of what you were doing, and all you really wanted to hear him say is, job well done. My dad, it never really got out of his mouth. He could never really tell me that. So I was playing every other sport and team sports and everything, and we were pretty average, and I thought, I'm better than this, so I chose golf. Didn't even play golf at the time. And I chose golf because I said, okay, if I do well, I'll get the credit. If I do poorly, I'll get the blame. I can accept that. Now we don't ever blame anybody for anything, or we blame everybody for everything. We don't really get it in the right spot. Just recently, to tell a different story, somebody called me from the Ryder Cup and said, who do you think ought to be the next captain? I said, the only way we're going to ever get the blame where it needs to be is go up there without a captain. Who can they blame then? That's a pretty good idea, isn't it? So anyway, getting back on the story that I was telling, my dad pushed me really hard. And I know there's some men in this room right here that grew up in the same circumstances. He knew exactly how far to bend me without breaking me. And, I wanted his approval so bad. It's unbelievable. It drove me. I'm telling you right now, it drove me. And I graduated from high school. University of Houston tried to recruit me. Coach Williams, a lot of you probably remember Coach Williams. He used to call me on the phone. He said, Hal, come to Houston. The water is so fine in Houston. Just come jump in. Harvey hadn't showed up at that point, But anyway, I never really understood what he meant about the water is so fine in Houston. And I came down here and on a recruiting trip, and the last thing that Coach Williams did, he took me he took me to the game the night before, but then we went in the library, and all the All-Americans from the University of Houston was, their pictures were on the wall. And Coach Williams said, look at that, Hal, you could be number 43. And it just really resonated in my head. I'm thinking 43, who remembers 43? So I got in the car. Now, this is pretty interesting. I got in the car. My dad was with me. We start back to Shreveport, and he said, so what do you think? I said, I don't know. I don't have any idea. I said, do you think anybody will ever remember number 43? And he said, what's that about? I said, they've had 42 All-Americans at Houston. He said, I'd be number 43. My dad he's sharp, he's quick. He said, oh man, they've never had one at Centenary. You'd be the first. He picked up exactly what I was thinking. I said, they don't even have a decent golf team. He said, they will. So he's already plotting the course, see? And I wanted his approval. See, now I'm talking about born into circumstances here. I don't know why this is happening. I didn't have a dog in the hunt. I'm just doing all the work. So, I believe in dreams. I believe God talks to us in our dreams. So the other night, I'm dreaming, all I can see is my hands in front of me. My hands. And I wake up and I'm thinking, okay, let's try to make some sense out of this. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And so it started making sense. We all are dominant. We have a dominant hand. I'm right-handed. Whether you're right-handed or left-handed, it doesn't really matter. So is God your dominant hand, or is he the other hand? That's really what it meant to me. For most of my life, God was not my dominant hand. Just recently, I spoke to the Babes of Harris event that they have where they honor all their junior golfers, and about 150 parents and kids in there, and I said, let's just do a little exercising. I said, here's what happens in youth growing up. Parents have one idea of what you need to do, and you have another idea, and most of the time, they overlap about that much. That's about it. I said, so let's do a little exercise here. Let's just pretend that God descends and sits down in a chair right between y'all. And he turns to you, Johnny, little Johnny, and he says, Johnny, I want to hear about your plan for your life. And I said, he sits there just as intently and listens to you, just like you would think God would. And he listens entirely to your plan, and he says, Johnny, that's a great plan. I love that plan. And then he turns to Dad, and he said, okay, Dad, let me hear your plan. Again, he listens intently and wanting to hear it. And he finishes, and he says, Dad, that's an amazing plan. I love that plan. Are y'all ready to hear my plan? Now, I stopped at that point, and I said, guess what I did? No, thank you, God, I got it. And I said, these kids, it's really important. I said, if you saw my trophy room, you'd think I did have it. But that's earthly trophies. I spent most of my time seeking approval from all the wrong places. So here's a couple of words that I'm sure everybody in this room really is in touch with. Earning respect and remaining relevant. You all know what that word relevance means, don't you? We've all earned relevance in one way or the other, and I tried to do it through golf. And I failed a lot more than I succeeded, I got to tell you. But all I care about being relevant to is to God. He's been moving in my life amazingly. This April will be 5 years ago that I moved down here to Houston. We're going to go back to the water is fine. The water is fine down here. You know what? God started introducing friends to me that are amazing. People that have made big differences in my life. Ministers. One man that I know a lot of y'all know in this room, Dr. Young. Some people can't be replaced. He's one of them. And doctors, physical therapists. I've lost 40 pounds. I'm going to get back out on the Champions Tour because I've got some unfinished business. Y'all may or may not know this. I had both my hips replaced, and right after I had the second hip replaced, I was still trying to play. I had a heart attack. Second tournament I played in. So, God was saying, hey, Hal, you're still not listening. You're still not listening. And, I have 4 children of my own, and then my wife has one. We just had our first grandbaby. The grandbaby's been here for the last 8 days. It's a little boy. So I spent most of my life wanting to hear my dad say, "I love you, Hal, and job well done." I can't recall that he's ever told me he loved me. And that really bothered me. And I bet there's some men in here that can relate to what I'm talking about right now. So here's what I did with my children. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I never asked them to do anything. My dad demanded. He didn't ask me, he demanded. I never asked him to do anything. So guess what I got? Nothing. And I told him I loved him so much that it didn't mean anything to him. My dad's 86 years old now. I don't have a house in Shreveport anymore, so when I go to Shreveport, I stay in the house with my mother and my dad. My dad's 86, my mother's 83. They're still both in pretty good health. And the last time I was up there at Christmas, my dad walked in. I got up early and he walked in at 5:30 in the morning, and we're sitting there talking. I said, "Daddy," I said, "for a long, long time, I was ill towards you because you didn't tell me you loved me." And I said, "I wanted it more than anything in the world." And he said, "So words mean that much to you, Hal?" It really made sense to me then. My dad taught me to never give up and to persevere. That was his deal. That's what he knew to teach me. And he loved me with all of his heart that way. It finally made sense to me. Words are meaningless, and we're trying to get what we want out of people here on earth. And, I'm really concerned with what he thinks of Hal Sutton and what I'm doing. And I'm going to go back out on the tour. I mentioned that. What I thought of Hal Sutton before was based on the last hole or the last round or the last tournament that I played in. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play to win. But as soon as the day's over with, I'm moving back into where I'm at in my life right now. And I'm not going to be defined by a ball out of bounds or a 50-foot putt. I believe that I'm in a different place in my life than I was then. And I'm in a comfortable place. Thanks to a lot of people here in Houston, Trey, Vic being one of them, Dr. Young being another. I could call out several names. I've got great friends down here. I'm really beginning to understand what the water's fine in Houston really means. What I've really learned about this whole thing is weren't y'all proud of Houston during Harvey? I mean, I really got the definition of the water's fine. I mean, people coming together and helping each other. Houston looked really good across the world. And it was amazing to see. Tough to go through, but amazing to see. And I'm really proud to say I am living in the city of Houston. When they announce me, they'll say, instead of saying Hal Sutton out of Shreveport, Louisiana, they'll say Hal Sutton out of Houston, Texas. It's about 40 years too late. I've been that way a lot of times in my life, too late. But I'm thankful that it's not too late. I don't know if I should talk any longer or not, but y'all get any questions out there about golf or Ryder Cup or?
You get along with that Herbie Case at Strong's?
My dad and mother go to Strong's probably 3 nights a week, to be honest with you. I get strawberry pie from up there fairly often, so. John?
You talk about your relationship with Jack Burke and how important he's been to your career.
Well, he's the real reason why I always stayed in contact with Houston. When Coach Williams tried to recruit me, he took me out to Champions, and the first person I ran into when I got to Champions was Jackie Burke. And he was walking out of the back door of the pro shop there, and he said, "Who are you?" That's kind of the way it started, and I mean, I'm nobody. And I said, Coach Williams invited me out here to play with Keith Fergus, and he said, "Well, I'm Jack Burke." And So I said to Mr. Burke, I knew who he was. I said, Mr. Burke, what's it like to play on the tour? And he just walked off. So the second day, I was invited back to play again. So same thing, meet him coming out of the back door, and when I walk out of the back door, he pushes me like this. I said, man, what was that for, Mr. Burke? He said, you asked me yesterday what the tour was like? It's like that. Everybody's trying to shove you down. Walked off. I was intrigued by this because he treated me kind of like my dad did, you know. I gravitated to those kind of men, people that tell you the truth. Think about that. So what do we believe in today? You watch TV, they call it fake news now. Fake news. I think everything's fake. You know, when I was young, I really thought there were some truths. I bet you all think back to you people would tell you things that you really believed in, and I mean, it was gospel to you. Now it's like, every time somebody's telling me something, I'm like, mm-hmm. You know, last night, if you watched the presidential address last night, he's telling one story, and they're saying he's lying right behind it. So who do you believe? I mean, is it party related? I mean, are we going to believe party? Some people in the world do. We got to get more faith-based in this country. I'm telling you right now. And we all play a role in that. Every one of us, every man in this room has affects somebody else. Affect them in the right way. Move them the direction that they need to be moved. They're looking for it. They may not even know they're looking for it. I wasn't looking for it, but God said, it's time you really know. So, you know, when we moved to Houston, we went to about 15 different churches. And we watched Dr. Young preach on marriage on TV, and I said, we're going to Second Baptist. So we went to Second Baptist West Side, and, you know, Dr. Young preaches right down the road here, you know. So I called Trey, and I said, where's Dr. Young preach at? He said, Woodway. Okay, Sunday we're going to Woodway. So we walked out, and the first sermon that I saw Dr. Young preach was right after Billy Graham died. And, I mean, they opened up with how great thou art, and they closed with just as I am. And we walk out of the church, and there's tears going down my eyes. I turned to my wife, and I said, I know where I'm going to church. I have no idea where you're going to church. But you're welcome to join me if you'd like. And I have to say that church has made a huge difference in Stacy's in my life. Dr. Young, specifically John sitting over here. Thank you, John. We're in his Sunday school class. Yes, sir.
Hal, some of us have handicaps of 20 plus. Why is God punishing us?
Can you panic after what now? After 20 plus, you said?
Yeah.
You know, I used to think God was punishing me, but God's not punishing us. We're punishing ourselves. One of my daughters called me last night, and she said, Dad, my oldest daughter, she said, have I failed you? She's 22 years old, hadn't finished college, not even close. Doesn't know what she wants to do, changed her hair color 6 or 8 times. You know, got a couple of tattoos. I guess it's in the modern way, you know, living up to everybody else's expectations, you know. So I haven't gotten around to saying what I told her. I said, Samantha, I said, you know, it's not really important whether you fail me or not. It's whether you failed God and whether you failed yourself. And I said, so I want you to think about that for a few days. You've hurt my feelings many times, honey. I said, the other day you told me that How you spent your money was none of my business. I said, let me help you with that. As long as you need my money to function. So, is there some people in this room that can subscribe to that? I'm sure there are, right? I said, you know what I pray for every day, honey? I pray for your independence. I pray for you making enough money that it becomes none of my business how you spend your money. But we haven't led you that way. And I said, so what I've had to do is I've had to pull some extreme measures by not giving you money. Because here's the deal. I said, I've tried to talk to you about this a dozen times or more. A legal sheet of paper, draw a line right down the middle, and on the left side is needs, and on the right side is wants. And we go down the left-hand side of the page first, and if there's anything left, we move over to the right-hand side of the page. But I said, you do it the opposite. You take care of everything on the right side, and you know that Dad's going to take care of everything on the left side. I said, well, let me help you with this, hon. This is not going to last forever. I bet there's some people in this room that can understand that too. Any more questions? There's one in the back.
What's the hardest part about coming back after 4 years?
Well, that is a long list, let me tell you right now. This feels like an old car that's been in the garage that's got a tarp over it. And we just pulled the tarp off and dusted everything off, and we're just trying to start the engine right now. And what I pray for every day is for God to give me the patience to know that this is going to take a little while. And this is not going to come back quickly. It doesn't have to. I'm still exempt and will be for a few more years. And you know, I'm looking forward to seeing old friends. You know, at the time that I left the tour, I didn't think it was that big a deal. You know, it's like, I'm ready to move on to something else. But you know, I only know one thing, and that's something about golf. And, you know, that relevance thing, you know, has been bothering me a little bit. You know, I really have no relevance outside of the game of golf. And, you know, I do with God. I know He cares about me. But, you know, I long to compete. Everybody in this room is a competitor. If there's not a competitor in the room right now, I'd like to see his hand. Look at that, no hands. Everybody likes to compete. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is going back out there and competing gentlemanly. At the end of the day, we shake hands and say, job well done. Good or bad, win or lose, my faith will still be strong. If I shoot 80 every day, my faith will still be strong.
How will you pick the first event to go back on the Champions Tour? Is there some magic to that?
No, it's picked already. The first week in February, I'm going to go down to Boca Raton and play. I am. You know, they only have about 25 or 6 tournaments. I'm probably in about 22 of them because the others are based on how you played last year. So I have to reprove myself in that regard. But 22 will probably be enough. You know.
We wish you the best of luck, Hal.
I appreciate that. I just want to say thank you all for having me here today. God's really been moving in my life, and I'm sure He's moving in a lot of people's life in this room. I praise God for being able to stand up here and tell you a little bit about me and my faith walk. And I'm thankful for everybody in this room and thankful for Houston, Texas. Thank you.